Hi, Hunter. Thank you for having us. I'm so happy to be back, and I'm even happier to be sharing the stage with Kika.
Yes. So good. Happy to be here.
So first off, let's kick it off and just do a little getting to know each other here before we jump into the topic at hand. Kika, can you start us off and just tell me a little bit about your story, your journey, how you ended up where you are?
Oh my gosh, of course. Well, it's so funny trying to condense the story is kind of a weird path. So, for my whole educational career, my college experience, I majored in gender studies with a focus in LGBTQ theory, loved the academic side of it, but also had a real interest in the music industry. And so I did my internships at music magazines. My first job was at a record label out in LA where I live now. And I think my soul was just dying a little bit from not being able to have the activist, queer side of it. And so I fell into an opportunity in the agency world that allowed me to combine those, working with celebrities, high net worth individuals, musicians on their social impact strategy, especially as it related to LGBTQ equity. And so that was kind of where it began. And now here at APCO with Tyler, I have the opportunity to have that experience touch everything that I do. And then on just a much more baseline level, like I said, I live in LA. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an associate director here at APCO, sitting within the impact practice more largely, where we get to do this stuff every day.
So cool. I love that artist background into the space that you're in. I can identify with that as being raised by a musician in Los Angeles, actually, then being
Mm.
in the arts and now being in tech and the arts and DE&I and all the things. So I think it's nice to have like a well-rounded past. You never know where we're gonna take us, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And it sounds like it's a more common path than maybe we think. There's something to that.
I think so too. And I appreciate that more people are open about that now.
Totally.
Yeah. Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, I think I bring a couple of things to the table when it comes to my identity. Hunter, as you know, I'm a true blue Chicagoan, born and raised here in the Windy City. Proudly a gay cisgendered Black male. I'm a husband to an amazing partner, Preston Blackburn. I love you. I know he's watching, so shout out to him. I'm a
Mm.
proud cat parent. But I think most of all, I think underscoring all of my identities, I like to consider myself a disruptor. It is not a pretty job, but I think my purpose truly in the corporate space, as well as in life, is to disrupt as many things as I can and as many systems as I can, and to really encourage companies and my clients to think differently and have a different approach and a different way of doing things. I'm really eager to course correct, and I'm really eager to hold people accountable, but really, most of all, truly my goal is to create equitable and safe spaces for everyone to feel included. My professional experiences are similar to Kika, but not as cool. I always say that she has like the coolest background ever, and it's always a very tough act following behind her. I've worked in the nonprofit space. I've worked in the educational sector. Currently, a senior associate director here at APCO, working side by side with Kika as part in tandem with our impact practice, and dealing a lot in the DEI space, and then co-leading APCO's LGBTQ equity offering with Kika, which ultimately truly just helps clients authentically connect with their LGBTQ stakeholders and consumers largely through strategy development and support because we're out here. So I
Mm.
think that would kind of sum me up in a nutshell.
Awesome. And do I remember correctly? Are you like a good cook or you like to cook? Am I
I
remembering that?
am, yes,
Yeah.
Hunter. You hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Food is the way to my heart. My stomach follows my heart.
Oh, good.
So, Kika, can you tell me a bit about APCO? What is it for folks that maybe aren't familiar?
Yes, big question with a big answer. I'll try and put it in a nutshell, and Tyler can fact check me. So, APCO is a global communications and PR firm. We headquarter in DC, but as you see from Tyler and I, we're definitely not all in DC. We've got hubs in Chicago, on the West Coast, in New York, as well as offices globally. Um, And that really allows us to span the gamut of work that's out there, from everything from corporate reputation to crisis to public affairs work, media and digital. Tyler and I have the opportunity to kind of look across all of those practices. And with the LGBTQ equity work that we do, make sure that we have that eye across campaigns. We know, especially around Pride Month, different industries and different organizations are thinking about their strategy and how they engage with the LGBTQ community. And every company, every organization starts in a different place on that, right? And they also have different goals, whether they're trying to do a media campaign, whether they're trying to activate on digital, or God forbid, whether something has gone wrong and they need to respond in a crisis. Tyler and I and the broader impact and equity and justice teams are there to help inform that approach. So big company with many foci and many teams, but we kind of have the task of looking across all of them. Tyler, does that feel right? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, and I would also just add, I think that perfectly sums it up. At our core, APCO is a strategic advisory firm, and I think to Kika's earlier point, we're really trying to best support clients through a wide array of complex issues. And I think fundamentally, we really try to help clients stay ahead. And we do it through a number of tactics, to Kika's point, either through equity and justice work or through crisis work, media work. All of these things converge in one, but essentially really trying to help clients see ahead and meet their opportunities head on.
Yeah. So Kika said something very, I mean, you both said interesting things, but one thing that stood out to me there, Kika, was, gosh forbid there's a crisis. And I'm curious, without naming any names, of course, but just like, what is that internal process for you as a team when you're working with a big faux pas that you are now handling with the client, and you know, like, that was not good, and that doesn't
Mhm.
feel good to receive that potentially, but you're the guiding light, right? So you're helping the client. What is that internal feeling and process like for y'all?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think it's worth saying that our goal is to get to folks before they would ever have a crisis, right? We find that companies and organizations get to a position of crisis when they have reacted too quickly and when they're not being authentic to their values, right?
Mm,
Um, I think that I want to continue to not name any names, but there's so much in the news about the LGBTQ community, especially the trans community and the legal backlash. I think that some companies want to be super responsive to what's happening, but when they can't match that with their internal values, when they have never spoken to this audience before, um, then that poses a risk, right? And so when something like that happens, the question is where do we go from there, right? Like, how do we step back? Um, I think it's to then take a look at their audience and those values and say, where did we go astray here? Why is the community that you usually speak to not resonating with the message that you have right now? And so it's breaking it back down to the basics and saying that nothing is beyond repair, right? But maybe you've taken a step that falls outside of your values and the mission and vision of your company. And we need to figure out how your agenda with this community falls within that framework. Tyler and I, of course, we are so radical. We have our own agendas about what the community needs and what they deserve. Um, but we know that there isn't one approach that's right for everyone. And so it's coming back to a tailored framework and finding something that makes sense. But Tyler does this work all the time. So Tyler, what am I missing there? How else are we jumping in and helping make it right?
Yeah, I think we do a really amazing job, especially you, Kika, of like pulse checking audiences and pulse checking the room, and ensuring that this fundamental concept of intentionality is embedded and woven through all of our work, right? I think that's such a big strategic priority for APCO, but also I've seen Kika really shine in this light too. Really thinking about like how is a company that claims to be progressive or has, these broader external commitments to under-resourced communities, how are they managing that external landscape but not doing the same, for example, for their internal stakeholders? And I think we tend to look at this through a very high level strategic approach, and look at the real impact that this could have on a business. This could lead to loss of business for companies for consumers who are a part of their LGBTQ plus consumer base. And we know that buying power is increasing across the country for LGBTQ plus communities. So we really want to be mindful when, companies are making these broader commitments, but maybe not walking the walk or talking the talk internally. And really ensuring that they're thinking twice, so to speak, before they make these communities and maybe they don't live their purpose. So I think intentionality is key here, and I think that is the fundamental tie-in, especially through the work that we lead with our LGBTQ equity offering, and really ensuring that companies are intentionally communicating and authentically communicating and connecting with their stakeholders in a way that balances their values and their purpose with their key audiences.
Yeah, I imagine there can be both sides of that, right? Where there could be one where a company is doing lip service, but they're not practicing anything internally. Or maybe they are doing things internally, but they're afraid to say anything outside because maybe they have a base that doesn't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like you said, there's two sides of it. And then a lot of the risk we see is in the waffling between the two, right?
Right. And
So
we can smell that a mile away. We're just
a
like,
hundred
like
percent,
sharks smelling blood. We're like,
100%.
Totally. Oh
And people
yeah.
are looking, right? They're looking and listening.
yes.
And now in this age of social media that we've been in for a long time, they're very happy to call out someone doing wrong. And so I think a worst case we would see is a company who's maybe trying to do the right thing. They do a super LGBTQ forward, inclusive campaign, get a ton of backlash, and then pull it all back, right? Well, now everyone's mad at you. So it's just finding a position that makes sense early and then holding the line is important.
Yeah. So looking into the inclusive workplace internally, what does that look like, and what policies and practices in the workplaces do y'all recommend that are implemented, should be implemented?
Yeah, I can take a pass at that really quickly, and so I don't hog Kika's time. I think so often when we think about the internal landscape of companies and we think about DEI, it's really easy to get lost in the ethereal, right? And oftentimes when we talk about DEI, it is in the strategic, cloudy nature of everything. But how do we get these processes around DEI to stick for organizations and ensure that one person or one team is not carrying the brunt of everything, or one community is not benefiting solely from DEI policy or inclusive policies than another? Um, and really ensuring also that we're not working in silos and that people aren't being burnt out so that we can create the most ideal workplaces. Like my ultimate vision is, Kika and I, we're champions for DEI in our workplaces and we're advocates for DEI, but I don't want just Kika and I to be that. I want everyone to be that, so that if, God forbid Kika leaves APCO or I leave APCO, the work can continue to be championed and leveraged and advocated for. And so I like to think of inclusive policies and DEI in general through the lens of it being sticky. And also through the lens of DEI having teeth and having a bite, so that, for example, LGBTQ plus employees, and as well as others from, historically under-resourced communities, because Kika and I do hold intersectional identities, so that all of these employees can thrive in their workplaces. And it can start by doing the most simple things. I think a lot of people, when they approach DEI work there, that cloud that I was talking about, that ethereal experience, it scares them because it's not, there's not something that you can hold on to. But I think if you're able to do the most common things and touch on the most common touch points, um, true change can happen. And I think this can look like a variety of things. It can look like you auditing how you give feedback through a culturally competent or identity sensitive lens and viewpoint. It can look like you auditing your platforms or your HR or business operation systems to ensure that when you are giving, feedback to folks, that you're operating outside of the binary. So often, I can't tell you how many times companies give out these like surveys to people to ask for feedback on colleagues, and it's saying like, okay, well, what are her strengths? What are his strengths? And like, you could be talking about a non-binary colleague, and that's so insensitive and so just not right. And I think there's room there. I'd also say that we really want to ensure that DEI initiatives can be truly project managed. I think that is
Mm.
also a scary word for people. But in order for any initiative to thrive, you need project managers in the room who are going to hold you accountable to timelines and deadlines and tactics and ensuring that you're meeting the core values that you want to meet as part of your DEI work. So I'm thinking about things such as, internal task forces or committees, or people who are really leveraging communications to ensure that they're audited with a very diverse perspective and a DEI embedded mindset so that we approach DEI in a way that, yes, is strategic, but also that is fundamentally like driving progress forward from start to finish. And hopefully this can ladder up to leadership and then ladder up to the next channel and the next channel so that you're really thinking about things like through the lens of I don't have a better example, but through the lens of an airplane. Before an airplane leaves the ground, you have so many safety checks and so many protocols that you need to adhere to before it can even lift off. That is the same. In the same vein, you want that for your internal policies and you want that for your DEI work so that real change can happen and that things can fly and have real grit and real teeth. And Kika, sorry to, as you know, I tend to run off. So please ground me
Please don't
back to reality.
apologize. No, my God, that was wonderful. And I would just add on to that why that's so important, why all of that is so important, right? I think that if you have a really progressive external campaign and you don't have the bedrock to stand on, there's so much risk, right? Of course, like from our view, it's just doing the right thing and making sure that you're serving at your LGBTQ and queer employees. But who's to say that you won't have a queer employee who has firmly not been supported in the workplace, and then that company has a really progressive, a queer facing campaign? Who's to say that they won't speak out about what they're facing internally if those values are not in alignment? Even beyond just doing the right thing, to an extent, it's just covering your bases, right? If you want to move forward and do right by that community, the first place that you need to be looking is inward. Otherwise, you put yourself in potential harm's way externally.
Yeah. And I'm curious, maybe with some companies, they might have LGBTQ plus employees, but there isn't anyone at the top. And then there's that dynamic of like, how do we speak up for the things that we need if we don't see anybody up there that's like us? So who needs
Kika and I are gonna change that.
Yeah.
I have belief in this lifetime that Kika and I are going to steer that forward and ensure that that landscape is changed for a bunch of people. But Hunter, I believe that the guest on before us underscored a very important point here. A couple of points. I think one, we really across organizations need to leverage intersectionality so that we're not missing a beat and that we're not missing the next generation of emerging leaders who are not just queer or who are not just LGBTQ plus, who are also Black and brown, who are also neuroexpansive, who are also immigrants, who are also refugees, and like you have a really well-rounded group of people who are able to spot microaggressions head on, who are able to really lead intentionally, again going back to this idea of intentionality, and create systems of support in organizations where mentorship can thrive and that you can have allies who are able to spot these emerging leaders who are able to come up and leverage sponsorship opportunities. I think one of the biggest things that frustrates me is being a queer person in an organization, in any organization, any setting that I've been in, is that I don't need to think like anyone else. I don't need to mimic the leadership of anyone else. I need, and me and Kika both need, we all need to be at these decision-making tables, so that we can lend our viewpoints and our experiences to people. I don't want to mimic the leadership style of anyone else. I want to develop my own, and I know Kika does too, so that we can, have the leadership that we have in place blossom.
Mm, mm. I love that. And you said it quite, there was a thing that flew by, but I was like, oh, that's really beautiful. I don't know that I had heard that before, which is Neuro-expansive. I really like that. As someone who identifies as neuro-spicy and has a few things, I'm going to keep that one in my back pocket for my own identity. So thank you for that. That's nice.
Yeah, you're not divergent, you're expansive. You think in a way that is elevated and enhanced. And I think that should definitely be, included in the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, we think differently, right? Because it's our own perspectives, whatever it is, whether it's neuro-expansive or it's your background that you come from or your whatever wonderful camp we're in, or there's many that we're in with these intersectionalities, but it's what brings our uniqueness to ideas and to the workplace and makes ideas better because we're not all thinking the same way. When we all think the same way, it's just like the same boring stuff over and over again. I always like to say, I prefer to be the minority in the room because if there's a lot of people that look like me, it's going to be boring and it's all going to sound the same. I just get really uncomfortable. So that's usually my goal when I go to a new place. How does a company start being queer inclusive? Let's say they have queer employees. They may or may not have been great about it inside.
Mm-hmm.
Both circumstances. How do they begin the journey now that they
Yeah.
want?
Yeah, Tyler, I'll jump in only because I think you would echo this wholeheartedly. But the first step is listening, please, to your queer employees. They know best about their experience and what they need. So, some sort of tactical steps to get there, organizing an LGBTQ plus ERG if there is not already one, and finding an executive sponsor that is able to bring those opinions and thoughts and needs that are surfaced to the top, right? There's other key pieces that you can look at, like Tyler said, auditing across communications and seeing where are we enforcing a binary where we don't necessarily need to be enforced. Is there a place that we can start having people flag their pronouns? Like I believe we all on this panel have our pronouns in our Zoom names. That's a great way to bring it to the top without having to have, even though it can be helpful to have an intentional moment to bring out pronouns, it reduces any potential discomfort, right? And just has that out from the beginning. Places to dig down a little deeper, looking at healthcare policy and seeing if gender affirming care is covered. Sometimes that can feel a little bit more advanced, but it's a way to help those employees and coworkers who need that support without them having to fight a new battle with HR or even with their insurance company to get the care that they need, right? We talked about this a little bit when around risk, but in terms of starting to support the queer community, the best place to start is inside, and then use the values and learnings that you develop there and start to channel that outside. In many ways, your employees can be your greatest spokespeople externally, right? As long as they are safe to do it. The ones that understand the values of your company and are able to say that, yes, we stand by those values. I'm proud to be here and I'm proud to be out while being here is so powerful. So I think that's a great place to start.
And Kika, I know you spoke a bit about like the deeper route that companies can take, and I believe that like I fundamentally these are like bedrock fundamental opportunities that corporates and employers can take. But sometimes I often think like something as small as office talk is an easy place for an employer or a company to start in trying to be more of an ally. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a work environment or a workplace and the conversation is around something as simple as like The Office or like Game of Thrones. And we love those shows, no shade. But would love to, but I don't know, like I would really love the opportunity for my colleagues and even at a broader network, like to talk more, even more about queer pop culture, to get smart on like what is it that we like to watch? Like what episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race are we like most invested in right now? Who's our favorite drag queen? Like small things like that. If you're able to educate yourself like that and really authentically have a conversation with an LGBTQ plus employee, it really goes a long way so that we don't have these like hegemonic work environments and that we can really center at the heart of everything queer experiences and thoughts. And I really also would encourage, people who are watching who do consider themselves to be allies to stay up to date on like legislation and societal shifts that are actually impacting queer communities, like all of ours. Like, I think these are like some of the easiest things that you can do. It's about watching, it's about having visibility into things, it's about researching. And these are things that don't take a lot of investment, they don't take a lot of work to really meet your colleague where they need to be met. And I'll finish this off too with a very esoteric thing that I really also wish our personal and professional folks on the line would like really adhere to. I often think about this concept, and Kika, I think I mentioned this on a call like maybe a Friday ago around queer temporality. Often, you know, as queer people, we don't live in the same time frame as our straight counterparts. We experience time so differently. The time that it takes for us to come out, the time that it takes for us to have our first kiss, the time that it takes for us to go on a first date is often so far behind than our straight counterparts that sometimes I wish that like our allies or the people that claim to be allies would take these into consideration in our personal and our professional experiences at large. Like it has taken us so many years to develop into the people that we are today that these experiences and these like moments and these key moments in time, they need to be counted in the greater conversation and how we navigate personal spaces and the workplace. So I would say like those three things, if we can better do that, I think we'd be a lot better as allies too.
Okay, we're done.
I could not agree more. I was like, now why would I even bother saying anything after that?
Yep.
Seriously.
Oh, wow, Tyler, that is so on point, so incredible. And it's so actionable for the people that are listening if they're posed to be allies. And
It's kind of out there. Sorry, I know I'm like getting a little
1 minute
outdated.
left, but my next question was like, y'all said you were radical. Tell me more about your radicalness. And you kind of just did it
Yeah.
without even prompting you, which is literally, that was my note, was just says radical. So I'm glad I got to hear a bit about that, because that is a radical idea that I am 100% in support of and also identify with. Because yeah, like I didn't kiss a known queer person until I was like much older, you know? And then like when it was like we were like these two little queer kids, and it was like, but that everyone else had done it way before me, you know, like years before, years before. And then having a first real relationship that's fostered, and then like a first like live-in partner, like all of that stuff. Years, for some people it's
Or
a
even when was the first time that you were able to paint your nails in a workplace? Like APCO was the first environment where I've ever been able to wear colored nails to a workplace. I'm so thankful for the environment that I work in because like no one bats an eyelash. No one like thinks anything differently. And Kika, I'm sure you can attest, like
Absolutely.
yeah, like these things like we're not able to really live a true life until we get into a place in our older lives where we're safe to really be able to show up the way that we authentically want to. So sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's little things like that that I think that are often discounted.
No, I love that. That's great that it's something as big as a relationship and as small as painting your nails really does paint the picture. And I love that no one bats an eyelash, and I'm sure their eyelashes are all beautiful where you work too.
No kidding.
We got to wrap it up. Tyler, I'm going to say it again. I hope we get to do this again. Kika, so great to chat with you. What's the best way for folks to stay connected and keep the conversation going with y'all? I know Tyler's active on LinkedIn.
Yes. Tyler's so much better at LinkedIn than me, so go find him. But I'm also there if you want to shoot me a message. And yeah, we'll be happy to chat with you about anything related to Pride or beyond. We both love to chat.
Always. And if you want to learn more about APCO's LGBTQ equity offering, please start a conversation with us. We're always happy to talk more about that.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your Pride, which is every day of the year. But for now, let's just go.
Thanks, Hunter. Thank you all.
Thank you, Hunter. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.